Welcome to Real People, Real Voices. I'm your host, James Jackson.
I'm your co-host, Pastor Wayne Moore.
Good to host with you.
Good to be back with you.
It's going to be a great show on today.
It is. We're talking about doing production by way of podcasts.
And a lot of people want to do that.
Yes.
But you got to do it right.
You got to do it right. We have a beautiful young lady here who shares, I think it's Genesis, is that it? Podcast agency. Share Your Genius. I'm sorry, that's what it is. Share Your Genius. And we're going to see how much of a genius Rachel is today as it relates to podcasting.
And we certainly need that. And before we get into that, we want to thank our sponsors, Lee, Castle, and Crawley.
I want to thank the Stewart March Away for all they do in the community, and they are busy working to make sure your needs are met, even as I speak.
And Fervent Care Christian Academy. Choose Christian schools and daycares. They are closer to Christ. We also want to encourage you to go to our YouTube channel and subscribe. You can watch this show when it's over. Also, other shows you might have missed.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, you need to be involved with it, because if you get involved with it, you can share it with somebody else, and they can share it with somebody else, and eventually we'll be here for a good while making sure you get information, and good information for our communities.
Yeah, good information. And if you're a Facebooker, go to Facebook, go to Real People, Real Voices, and like us on Facebook. You can watch this show on Sundays at 5:30 and on Friday nights at 9:30 p.m. We look forward to spending time with you both times. We've got a lot to share with you, so stay tuned. We'll be back after this. Welcome back to Real People, Real Voices, and we're joined by Miss Rachel Downey. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Happy to have you, Rachel. Tell us about your genius.
I was getting ready to say the same thing.
Well, I don't know if it's my genius. It's more about me helping other people share theirs. But I can tell you, I started this company. I had a baby. She was born 3 months early, and we had some fun challenges with that. And I said, I got to do something that allows me to take care of my baby and still, help other companies grow their business and share their message. And so Share Your Genius was born. And so what we do is we're a full-service podcasting agency.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many clients do you have?
I'm doing about 10 shows right now.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And how long have you been in business?
Let's think. So I launched my first podcast in October 2016, but we've been pushing the metal since October 2017. So we're still young and growing.
And you sounds like you're energetic about it as well.
I love it. It's so much fun.
Tell the person how they can get started.
Yeah, so typically what I do is I work with somebody to identify their genius, like what story do they want to tell through their podcast. And so I walk them through a launch process that really is from 0 to 100. So you got an idea, and let me help you craft it, figure out your audience, and then we build it from there.
Building is so important, and with social media and a lot of the live video and radio, are you seeing that people are still interested in podcasting?
Oh, podcasting is one of the fastest mediums growing right now. So there's like 73 million Americans alone tapping into podcasts a month. And the average American is listening to 7 to 8 shows like religiously. And so the opportunity for people to now create a show and establish their brand through podcasting is massive.
So talk to us about positioning leadership as experts.
Yeah. So podcasting is a really good way to share your subject matter expertise. And you can do this in a couple different ways. One is literally just like having some great topics that, that are relevant to you and your audience, or getting thought leaders to come onto your show and talk about their subject matter expertise. And by default, you are considered the same in terms of like credibility.
That's good.
Yeah.
Dr. Moore, a lot of times there's a lot going on, and there are experts that don't get the opportunity.
Like yourself.
To share what they know.
Right.
There are limitations. But so how can podcasting, when you talk about just generating a show and creating a show, getting it out there to people, how does that work?
Yeah, so there's, in everybody's phone, there's an app to tap into podcasts. And so when you have your show, what we do is set you up to be found on those apps, basically. And that's the main way that we help facilitate that. A lot of people think that they can just plug in a microphone and talk, and they're good to go, and they're going to have a good show, and that's just not the way it works.
That's what I thought.
Nope. Like, I would tell
think
you,
we both
don't
thought
do
that.
that. There's this term out there called pod fading. And what that means is a lot of times people, like I just said, will just plug in a mic and that's their thing. But if they don't take the time to establish what they're going to talk about, and what I do is I work with people to create their show flow.
Can I help you improve that term?
Which one?
Pod fading. Pod fading to black.
Yeah, because they like completely stop doing it.
Right.
And shows fail for a number of reasons. One is pod fading, meaning they just stop producing it because it's too much work and they didn't think it through and blah, blah, blah. But the other reason is like sound quality. If your sound quality is bad, nobody's going to want to listen. Yeah. And then the other reason is just lack of consistency. So lack of consistency in what you're saying in terms of your show flow, or lack of consistency in scheduling and getting it out there.
So your company, kind of give us the scope of services with regard to, okay, we help you create the show, and then from there, do you provide support services?
Oh yeah, so we got you from every angle of the podcasting world. So we get you launched, and then we help produce it on a consistent schedule, and then we help grow your show. And growing your show comes in a lot of different ways. One thing we do that's really cool is podcast tours. So when people launch a show, or let's say they're launching a book, we get them onto other shows to share that message.
You know, what's so ironic about it, you're doing a lot of launching and a lot of building. What type of resources does it take to be involved with what you're doing?
So typically it's software based. So my whole philosophy is to help people do their podcast remotely, and that's coming from the experience that I had in having a baby and having to like be from the hospital. And so I wanted to allow other people to share their genius from wherever they're at. Okay. And so I set up all my clients to do their shows remotely.
Okay.
So would people be surprised at how economical this is without having to give
That's another way to ask the question that
That's
I
what I
asked.
was like, is that what you're trying to get at?
Would they be surprised at how affordable it is?
Yeah.
Or would they say, wow, that's a little beyond what I could do?
You know, it really depends on the company. I have a DIY version where I work with people like a couple times, just kind of guide them through the process. And then I have a more on hands-on version where I actually do a lot of or my team does a lot of the heavy lifting to get the show done. So I have two options so that I'm serving both checkbooks, if you will.
Yeah, now we're talking. Now we're talking. When we look at this particular situation going on and how you started your tell us how people can get in contact with you, where you're located, where your address, and tell that camera right there, and they'll be able to help you with that.
Sure.
We'll help you with that.
So I have an office at Launch Fishers in Fishers, Indiana, and you can find us at www.shareyourgenius.com. You can email me at rachel.downey@shareyourgenius.com, and I'd be happy just to like hear your idea. You know, you can share your genius with me, and we can see if we can create a show for you.
So when you talk about creating shows, Rachel, and we talk about there is some cost, of course you got to invest in what you believe in. Is it possible for people, we're finding, Dr. Moore, that people working from home are making a considerable amount of money substantially.
Yeah.
Is this something where if someone says, hey, this is working for me, where they can pull in advertisers to help pay for their podcast?
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the things that is really powerful about a podcast is the opportunity to monetize. So on one level, if you're doing like an interview-based show, you can actually use it as a way to open doors to those hard-to-reach prospects and have them on your show, and then you're able to really create that rapport with them. And then the other way is through sponsorships. So if you find a company that aligns with your messaging and what you're trying to share, or your audience is a great target for them, then absolutely. Another way that podcasting is booming is in the advertising space. So absolutely. The third level to that in terms of monetizing your podcast is it gives you a platform to share resources with your audience. And that can be, you know, if you have informational products or if you have just calls to action or events, anything like that, your podcast gives you an opportunity to share that information with a wider audience.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all this information
Yeah.
with us.
Thank you.
We hope that a lot of those of you who all are watching and you've been wanting to get into podcasting, this may be the way to go for you. So be sure to contact Share Your Genius. You'll see that right there on the screen. We appreciate you joining us today. We have we have another segment. I almost said the rundown.
Yeah.
We have another segment coming after this, so stay with us. We'll be back after this. Welcome back to Real People, Real Voices, and we are joined by some wonderful guests today to talk about Reach for Youth Incorporated. Kendi Klopp is here.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
Hey, thank you.
And also Erin McBride, Reach for Youth. Talk to us about this organization.
Sure. So we were founded in 1974 by a group of parents that had high school kids that were starting to get into trouble, and there were no mental health services available in the 1970s that they could access. So we started in a small house with services donated by therapists that believed in the mission, and so we started seeing kids on the south side of Indianapolis. That then evolved into the 80s with our Teen Court, which is a prevention program for first-time juveniles who, instead of being put through the court system, are referred to Teen Court, and they go in front of a jury of their peers. And once they complete their sentence, it's actually erased from their juvenile record. And I'll let Erin talk about how that's involved to be an in-school Teen Court program as well. But we do mental health services for kids ages 7 to 18, as long as they're a senior in high school. And we provide services to them with their families. We will not see any kids without their parents because we don't have the same results in their treatment plans without that. So we see a lot of 90% of our kids are low income. We don't refuse services because families can't afford to have their kids seen by a therapist, and we're excited to try to be a preventative service to stop a little bit about what you see in the news these days. Is we want to get those kids before you see what some other kids are doing on the news right now.
And what age groups are you seeing?
So ages 7 to 18
7?
are yes. So we start as early as 7.
Wow.
Tell us, Aaron, what she was talking about.
Yeah, so our in-school Teen Court program, what we're actually trying to do is move beyond just an intervention and providing a diversionary program for youth to expunge their record. We actually want to get ahead of the game. So
That is phenomenal.
Thank you.
That is
Yes.
phenomenal. We have a lot of adults who are staggered in the system because of expungement,
Yes.
because of lack of it.
Yes.
That is phenomenal. Go right ahead and explain it.
Yeah, so kind of what we'll do is we'll work with these in-school partners like Arsenal Tech, Decatur, Beech Grove, schools along those lines, and we actually bring the programming to them. So these schools are able to then, instead of using the traditional methods of suspension and expulsion, they can then address these unwanted behaviors by sending them to the Teen Court program. So then their peers are still involved with that process of coming up with constructive consequences. Some of those can consist of writing an apology letter, maybe to the victim, doing community service, coming back and serving as a juror as well. And so with our programs last year, through all of Teen Court, we saw over 1,000 hours given back to the community, over $2,500 returned in restitution back to the community as well, if that was from theft or something along those lines. So we're really engaging these youth and then trying to teach them about the justice system before it's too late and when they're actually speaking to a judge, person to person, face to face. And all of our judges in Teen Court are practicing attorneys as well. So they bring in that courtroom feel.
Preventive programs.
And really focusing on restorative justice.
We don't
as
have
well.
very many preventative programs for youth, and we don't have really as much mental health needs for youth. And this is a piece of the puzzle that can really alleviate and reduce some of the reduction of young people going into criminal justice system if they can get some information about it beforehand, which is phenomenal. What is your success rate?
Yeah, so the success rate last year, we were right at 97%. So 97% of those youth who actually came to, or who were referred to Reach for Youth completed the program. But I think the more exciting thing to talk about is the recidivism rate that we'll see. So that reoffense rate, traditional juvenile justice system, they'll see somewhere between 36, maybe 39% of youth who will come in and then reoffend, commit a similar crime. We're seeing through Johnson County, we actually had the probation officers there run it for us, and we're under 16%. So we're in between 13 to 16%, which is very exciting. So we're cutting that in half with our programming.
Okay, that's great. That's great.
Well, and because when they come to us for teen court, we do an assessment. Our safety net is then our mental health programs. So if a kid is getting into trouble, there is an underlying cause to that. They may be experiencing trauma in their own life. So if our teen court staff notice that a youth could benefit from mental health counseling, then they're referred to our therapy side of our program. So it really is that great safety net. We have to get to the root of what these kids are going through, what's causing them to do these behaviors that we don't want to see.
I like it because your diversity in location.
Correct.
Marion County, Johnson County, Morgan County, Hamilton
Yes.
counties. And
Yes.
so that's phenomenal. And you serve over 3,100 young people?
We do. We do.
That's a
phenomenal.
lot. And you mentioned, Kendi, that years ago there was
No mental
there
health.
was not a lot of care. And when we were younger,
Yes.
I guess if we exhibited any kind of behavioral issues, our parents.
They would
Correct.
provide the mental health
They would.
counseling.
It was
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
But in some cases, they probably went a little too far with us. There might have been something going on. I don't think people really think about the fact that children can be depressed or can have anxiety
Well,
issues.
it's true. And then there's the stigma. You know, we joke that as we write grants, we write more grants for teen court because people understand that. But you write grants for depression, anxiety, substance abuse. Sometimes that's not taken. People don't think, oh, yeah, that's really a big need. So, when we talk about what's in the news about recent suicides and such.
That was my next question.
Yeah, well, we talk about, and I've been reading a lot about this, everybody shares if they have cancer, if they have heart problems, diabetes, but we don't say, I have a mental health issue, and we need to treat it like it's a medical condition.
I think we're in
and
top
that.
3 of suicide attempts.
We were
Young-
just, we have that stat.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
I know
so-
that stat well.
Yeah, so we
Is
were-
are we 3?
Well, in a couple of instances, yes. So Indiana in 2015 ranked third
Right.
in high schoolers.
The attempt now. the
Yes, who
attempt.
have considered.
Yeah.
Also second, who have now made a plan.
They made a
as
suicide
well.
plan, so
yeah.
even higher.
Yeah.
That's been in the news here lately. with,
Yes.
A
yes.
few movie stars in
Yeah.
1 week.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
And that's
exactly.
bringing the light to it, I think, a lot more, but it's not new.
But these are 13 to 18-year-old kids
Yeah.
Right.
that are contemplating
They are.
suicide.
They
And
are.
Indiana is in the top 5 in those areas.
And
So-
even before those movie stars or the celebrities, before their suicides, this has been going on a long time. We were number one at one point, I
Right.
think, right?
I'm not sure if we're number
Yeah,
one.
as it
I
relates
hope
to
we've, I
the
hope we've not
attempts.
hit
Okay,
that.
okay.
But
It
It might have
wouldn't
come up.
surprise me.
That was
Yes.
15
Yes.
that I've read recently.
Yes, exactly.
But when we look at it in its right context, we're wondering what's going on with young people. I think we had some conversations sometimes ago where the drug issues are in homes. One single parents. There's a lot of things going on in the family structure now, and mental health, whether you believe it or not, is doing everything they can to prevent some of these things. But we have to be cognizant of the fact of what's really going on.
Well, and you bring up a really
do.
interesting point too. Even going back to saying, like when you were younger, those parents were providing the mental health. Maybe it's your religious groups, affiliations that were providing that mental health, but the parents might need mental health too. And so we're taking an approach, a family-centered approach, of being able to provide mental health services to the youth as well to their parents too, and making sure the whole family is together on what's needed.
Thank you.
You all have been great guests today.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing the information with us. And for all of those of you who are our viewing audience, we're glad that you joined us today. We'll be back after this. Welcome back to Real People, Real Voices. I'm your host, James Jackson.
Co-host Pastor Wayne Moore.
And I'm your executive producer, Faith McKinney.
And you do a great job.
Well, thank you very
appreciate
much.
you.
I appreciate that.
Two very, very good segments.
It was.
Serious issue with opiate crisis.
Opiate crisis, overdoses in our communities. And it's just not in inner city, but it's also rural.
Yeah.
It's also suburban. It's become a problem. Also, the hepatitis C epidemic that was announced here recently, it is moving throughout our communities. So we have a lot going on in our communities as it relates to health and mental health. And so this show is very pivotal in making sure that this information gets out correctly and that people will know where to go get the services to meet those particular needs.
Absolutely. And certainly that, along with the mental health that we're seeing in our young people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's in the news. You know, every month or so we have something going on where people, young people especially with mental health challenges, are finding themselves in trouble. And it takes a toll in adulthood. We've had two high-profile suicides, unfortunately, due to mental illness.
We cannot no longer be the city that's in denial, that things like happen afar off cannot happen here now.
Yeah.
And so we have people who are in places that don't think things like that are happening now would have been happening.
Absolutely.
And so we must bring our citizens out of denial and help them to realize that whatever's happening abroad is eventually going to happen in places that you never thought it would happen.
Yeah.
And it's young people. They're not 16 anymore. They're 13 and 14 and 15 years old who are experiencing mental illnesses.
Even down to 7 years old.
So we
There's
can't
no
live in denial
safe place anymore. I think parents, go to move to locations where they think it's safe. There's no safe place. It affects us all.
Except in the arms of the Lord.
Absolutely.
That's where it is, brother.
So,
Lay your head on his bosom.
yes, just as John did.
Yes, he did.
So you take care of yourself and take care of others, and we'll see you this time next week.